Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the July NEMSIS Tax Public Training Webinar. Today is Thursday, July 19th, 2018. This webinar is intended for local EMS agency data managers and their representatives. Josh Legler, who is a contractor for the NEMSIS Technical Assistance Center, will be sharing information related to the fine points of the NEMSIS V3 demographic data. And he has this title here as Agency Demographic Data. And I will now turn the time over to Josh Legler.
Okay, thank you, Monet, and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon to those on the East Coast. We are going to talk about agency demographic data today. Before we jump into that topic, I would like to just kind of run through the participant list, get a sense of the audience today, make sure that I tailor what I talk about to you. There's a few of you I already recognize on the list, but I'd like to call out the others that I don't recognize, and would just like to know where you're from in terms of whether you're at the agency level, state level, a vendor, or someone else. This will give you all a chance to momentarily unmute yourself to respond as we go through the list. So Aileen Risch, can you tell us where you're from?
Hi, my name is Eileen Rich. I'm from AMR. I'm one of the project managers for our EPCR platform.
Okay, great. And Dale?
This is Dale Nachmas. I work for Colorado and at state level. Yeah, EMTS data team with Scott Beckley.
Okay, great. And I see Irina Domchak from AMR and Jesse Haas from Butler Ambulance, Josh Polonio from Falk Ambulance. Catherine Menini. Catherine, are you there? Okay, not hearing anything from Catherine. I see Keenan Early from Zoll, Laurel Boyd from Oregon, Raghuram, who is a PhD student, Scott from Colorado, and then Viewer 8. We don't know who Viewer 8 is. Okay, and Catherine is with Mobile Life Support Services in New York. Okay, great. So a mix today of agencies, vendors, and states. I'm going to, the information that I'll present today will be mostly from the perspective of an EMS agency, but states are welcome to listen in, and of course vendors, since your customers are EMS agencies, I think this can be helpful for you as well. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk about why agency demographic data is key to data quality. We talk a lot about patient care report data, but we don't talk about demographic data very much. And then we're going to talk about what's included in agency demographic data. So when we say agency demographic data, what are we even talking about? And we're going to talk a little bit about how you use the state data set that your state has provided to set up your agency demographic data so that your agency reflects the resources and requirements of the state in which you operate. And lastly, I want to run through some common issues that I see when I look at demographic data from EMS agencies. These are issues that you could take a look at in your own setup and see if you can address them. Along the way, I welcome any questions that you may have. Feel free to interrupt, and we should have plenty of time at the end for questions as well. So first, demographic data is key to data quality. And I want to show a couple of examples of why I say this. Let's say that a state, whatever state you're in, they recognize certain licensure levels. Maybe they recognize the 2009 levels from NHTSA. So EMR, EMT, AEMT, and paramedic. And excuse me just a minute, we are getting some background noise from someone. Just double check that you have yourself muted, that would be great. Okay, that's sounding better. And then let's say that you set up your agency, you went to your NEMSIS 3 system, maybe you even, transitioned from a NEMSIS 2 version of your system to the NEMSIS 3 version. And back in the day, you had EMT Basic, EMT Paramedic, and when you set up your new system, you continued to use those old license levels from the 80s and 90s. Well, what's going to happen is every time you fill out a patient care report and you mark who was on the call as crew members, maybe you had Mr. Doe and Ms. Smith, and he was an EMT basic and she was an EMT paramedic. This data is going to show up in all of your patient care reports. Now, the best place to catch that problem is back in your agency configuration, which is your agency demographic data. Here, we can see your personnel list, and we can see that Mr. Doe is recorded down as EMT basic. But we know that your state no longer recognizes the old EMT basic level. They recognize the 2009 EMT level. And if he's been licensed recently by the state, he's probably licensed at the 2009 EMT level. So if we can see that in your agency configuration, your demographic data, then you can fix the issue there in one place before you start doing patient care reports. And then that means that all those patients' care reports, there might be thousands of them, they'll have the correct information because we caught the issue in your demographic data. Here's another example. Let's look at facilities. Let's say that your state has a facility with the ID 872261, and the state calls it Shriners Hospital. Let's say you set up your facility list in your software, and you set up a facility and you give it the facility ID of SHR, and you call it Shriners. Well, every call that you go on where you delivered the patient to Shriners, it's going to show up with that destination code and name that you set up in your agency configuration. However, the correct code and name have been provided by the state. So again, here's a situation where every call where you went to Shriners Hospital is going to have the wrong information compared to what the state has published, because it was set up wrong in the first place in the agency demographic data. So again, where's the best place to catch this? It's in your agency demographic data. If we can see the facility list in your demographic data, we can see that Shriners Hospital was listed incorrectly there. Get that fixed, get it to match what the state has provided, and then subsequently, every call that you go on where you deliver to Shriners Hospital will now have the correct information. So that's how demographic data is key to data quality. We can check in one place to make sure things have been set up correctly. And once we know everything has been set up correctly, then we can be confident that when you fill out patient care reports, all of that information that depends on your agency demographic data will be correct because it came from the agency demographic data. Any questions on this concept here about how demographic data is key to data quality? Okay. Just a note, we have a few people on the phone from Denver, Colorado. One of them is unmuted. So those of you from Denver, if you could check and mute yourself if you're not talking, that would be great. Okay. So next topic, what's included in agency demographic data? I'm going to actually go over to the NEMSIS website at this point to show you what's in demographic data. If you've been using NEMSIS, the NEMSIS standard for a while, you are hopefully familiar with the NEMSIS website and especially the data dictionaries page on the website. It's available through the technical resources menu and then the link that says V3 Data Dictionaries in XSD. This is a place that I go to pretty much every day in the work that I do. And I grabbed the web version of the data dictionary. I've brought that up here. And you'll see that there are two data sets in this data dictionary. DEM data set is your agency demographic data, and EMS data set is your patient care report data. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. Okay, so we're going to focus today on DEM data set. We spend a lot of time in EMS data set. That's the record of the calls that you go on. But DEM data set is the information about your agency. You can see at a high level here the type of information that is included in your demographic data. There's basic info about your agency, contact people, some configuration stuff, which we're going to look at in more detail, agency locations, such as stations or staging locations, your vehicles, your personnel, medical devices, facilities to which you transport or transfer your patients, and any custom element data that you may have set up or that your state has requested. This is the full demographic data set. Only some of this data flows up to the national EMS database. I'm going to flip to another tab here that shows the national elements only. And here when I go to Dem Dataset, you'll notice that it's much shorter. Okay, so here's the full data set, and then here is the one that's national elements only. And you'll see it only has two sections, basic info about your agency and your configuration, and that's it. Okay, so let me check my notes here. I want to take a look here in the national elements only just to show you what's mandatory or required at the national level versus things that are optional. So I'm actually going to start over here in the full data set. When I go into D agency, there are 26 data elements here. And you'll see that most of these have a red flag with an N in it, which means that they are national elements. Those elements get sent to the national EMS database. You'll see that almost everything in this section, D agency, has a national element. I'm going to also take a look at D configuration. And you'll see again, almost everything in this section is a national element and gets sent to the national EMS database. All of the other sections of demographics, they do not go up to the national database. They may or may not be required by your state. So you would want to be familiar with your state requirements. Let's flip back here to the D agency section. And I want to just kind of highlight some of these things that are mandatory or required as national elements. If you have set up your system for NEMSIS 3 reporting, and there are some of these things that you've skipped, go back and fill them in so that you'll be compliant with national requirements. You'll see, of course, your agency has to have a state ID and an agency number and a state to which you are reporting. And then these elements here are national elements, your service area, which states, counties, census tracts, and zip codes your agency serves. We're going to, I want to spend a little bit of time here in the agency service area. The way that this is set up is if your agency serves multiple states, then you'll have multiple sets of the agency service area. And each set would have the state. So it might say Oregon or Washington. Within each of that, within each state, then you would have a list of the counties that you serve. You may just serve one county, that's fine, or you may serve multiple counties. You'll also have a list of all the census tracts that you serve and all the zip codes that you serve within that state. So if my agency served both Oregon and Washington, so let's say we were in Portland, Oregon, and also across the river in Vancouver, Washington, then I would have two groups of agency service areas, one for Oregon and one for Washington. In the Oregon group, I would list the county that I serve, which would be Multnomah County. That's where Portland is located. And I would have a list of census tracts in Portland that my agency serves, as well as the Portland zip codes. Across the river in Vancouver, Washington, well, I would have a set for Washington. I would list the counties that I serve in Washington. I think it's Clark County, if I remember right, that Vancouver is in. I would list the census tracts in Vancouver, and I would list the zip codes in Vancouver that are served by my agency. Now, lots of people know what states, counties, and zip codes they serve, but a lot of people don't know what census tracts they serve. So the NEMSIS TAC has provided a tool for that, and I want to show that to you. So I went up to the View Reports menu to EMS Agency Reports, and you'll see some information about the EMS Agency Service Area Builder. I'm going to go ahead and click the link there to go to it. This will come up to where I am if you let it know what your location is, allow your location sharing. So I'm in the Portland, Oregon area. And so if my agency serves some of Portland and some of Vancouver, then there's a couple ways I can go to build my service area here. I maybe should have picked a smaller town, but I'm going to pick Portland. So I clicked on, oops, I'm going to click on the select button up here. And I can just click on Portland. And I can choose it. Then we'll give this a minute to do its thing. It's going to find all of the census tracts in Portland. So the city of Portland has all those census tracts. I can do the same thing over here for Vancouver. And found all the census tracts in Vancouver. So if that's my agency service area, both of those cities, now I have it over here. I have the Oregon set and I have the Washington set that I'll set up in my software. I can see the counties. Oh, these are all, in Oregon. So Portland is in Multnomah County, but it goes a little bit into a couple other counties. You'll see a long list of census tracts in Portland, a big city. So those are all the census tracts, and a long list of zip codes that are covered in Portland as well. Now in the Washington section, I'll see the one county, Clark County, along with a long list of census tracts that are in Vancouver, and the zip codes that are in Vancouver. So I can use this information here from the Service Area Builder, log into my own agency software, and set things up. Another way I can go is I can draw my service area. If I happen to know the boundaries of my service area, then I can just do it that way. What you'll notice is this shape that I'm drawing here is going to get enlarged somewhat when I'm done drawing it, because the purpose here is to identify the census tracts that I serve. So if there's a census tract that I only serve part of it, it'll be included in this list because I do serve part of that census tract. So you'll see that it's slightly enlarged compared to the shape that I drew because some of these census tracts go way out to the west or the east. Again, I see the two sections, Oregon and Washington, with the counties, census tracts, and zip codes that I serve. Now, one reason that census data is helpful and important is because we can get all kinds of statistics from it. So if you use the Service Area Builder, you'll be able to see all kinds of things about your agency service area in terms of area, population density, and some other stats like percent under 18, percent 65 plus, percent in poverty, uninsured, or disabled. There's a lot of other data that can be obtained from the census data once we know what census tracts your agency serves. So when your agency data goes up to the national level, this census tract list actually helps with giving context to all those patient care reports that you're sending up. Okay, any questions about the EMS agency service area? All right. So that's one area I wanted to point out. The other area I want to point out is your annual statistics. This is also a grouped section, so you can have a set of annual statistics for each year. So the year would be set to, let's say, 2017. Now, where would you find out your primary service area size and population? Well, you might know that information already. And if you don't, use the NEMSIS Service Area Builder, and you'll find the area and population under the census statistics. And then there's some additional information collected here that will depend on the type of agency that you are. So if you're a transporting agency, most of these will apply to you. If you're a non-transporting agency, you would not have a patient transport volume. You just leave it blank. And if you don't bill, you would have no billable calls. You would leave that blank. So you'd fill out the ones that are applicable to your agency. Each year, you should, sometime shortly after the end of the year, you should go in and add a new year of statistics in your agency. This is useful in a couple of ways. One, at the national level, this data is used to categorize your agency into a bucket of agencies that are similar in terms of their size or volume, so that your agency can still be anonymous, but can be compared to similar agencies, also anonymous, just based on their size and volume. Another thing this can be helpful for is for auditing your patient care report data. So if you say in your annual stats that you did 20,000 transports last year, and the state only received 15,000 transport reports from your agency, then we know there's an issue, that some of your reports didn't make it to the state system. So it allows that sort of double check or auditing. Okay. Now there are some other areas in your agency setup that that depend on information from your state. And these are mostly in the configuration section. In the configuration section, I want to focus on a few areas here: procedures, medications, and protocols. These are areas where you should receive guidance from your state. So your state probably has a list of all of the procedures that the state recognizes. They say, based on our state level laws, rules, requirements, protocols, whatever the state may have, these are the procedures that each level in our state can do. EMRs can do these procedures. Paramedics can do these ones. And the same thing for medications and protocols. Now, you at the local agency level, you operate within those state parameters. So the state may say, these are all the medications that paramedics can do in the state. At your local agency, you may say, okay, out of that menu of medications, these are the ones that our paramedics in our agency actually do. Okay, so for example, there may be several different medications used for pain, for managing pain, and in your agency, you may use one or two of those pain management medications. So the state list would list several pain management meds, but in your specific individual agency list of medications, you want to list the ones that you actually carry. Or, sometimes it may be the case that you carry something that's not on the state list because you have a variance or exception, permission from the state to carry that additional medication. Well, I want to show you how all of this ties together. So I want to again go to the NEMSIS website. I'm just going to scroll down on the home page, and you'll see this map of the U.S. This is where you can get to the state requirements for your state. Since I live in Oregon, I'm going to go ahead and pick Oregon. Okay, Oregon has published something called a state data set, and in fact, most states have published a state data set. As I mouse over it here, you'll see there's a bunch of things included in this state data set. I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to go to the medications list. And here we can see that Oregon has provided a list of medications that they'd like the agencies in the state to use. And then they've indicated for the different levels, which of those levels can carry that medication. I'm going to sort by the EMR level. And you'll see that Oregon has these 7 medications that they permit EMRs to administer. And then there's all these other medications that can be administered at different other levels. So when you're setting up your agency in NEMSIS 3 reporting, you want to check the state list of medications. Make sure that you set these up for your EMRs if you have EMRs in your agency. Make sure you use the codes that the state wants you to use. That way, everything will be consistent across all agencies in the state. If your EMRs do carry some additional medications that are not on the state list, then list them, because it reflects reality. It reflects what you really do. If your EMRs don't carry everything that is on the state list, don't list those that your EMRs don't administer. So we want this list to be accurate to reflect what your agency really does, but you want to use the state list as your reference to make sure you select the right codes and that you're not way off base compared to what the state requirements are. Okay, so that's medications. Same thing with procedures, also with the protocols list. There are additional things that you will set up from your state data set. In particular, I would point out the facilities list. Here, for example, in Oregon, they've provided a list of all the hospitals in the state. And these are the names that Oregon wants their agencies to use, and these are the location codes, street address, city, state, etc., that are the official information for each of those facilities. So when you set up these facilities in your agency, you want to use this information here. So again, we have consistency throughout the state as agencies transport to various facilities. Then every agency would be using the same location code, name, and address for those locations. Other states, in addition to providing a hospital list, they also provide a list of additional, clinics or long-term care facilities, nursing homes, etc. So whatever your state provides, that allows you to have those parameters within which you will set up things in your agency. As I noted earlier, demographics being key to data quality, if this is set up correctly in your demographic data, then all of your patient care reports where that hospital is the destination will be correct. They'll have the correct information. It's a lot easier to fix it once in your setup than it is to fix it in thousands of patient care reports down the road. Okay, so I want to pause for a minute and see if you have any questions at this point, as we've covered the things that should be set up in your agency demographic data, at least from a national perspective. And we've also covered state data set and how you utilize the state data set to set up your agency correctly. Are there any questions or comments at this point on those topics? There's got to be something. Anyone? Okay, well, before we move on to the last section of the presentation, let me start with this question to all of you. As you've set up your agency,
Josh, are you there? Give us a moment, everyone, please. Josh got disconnected.
hey, this is Josh. I think my computer connection went down. So I'm dialed in on my phone now. Can anyone still see my screen sharing?
Yes, we can see your screen and we can hear you.
Okay. And do you see my screen sharing? Is it on the data dictionary?
It's on the facilities list.
Okay, so yeah, I've lost my computer connection. I'm going to disconnect on my computer and try to connect back in. So sorry, I apologize for the hiccup here. Give me one moment. I'll see if I can get back in. So I'll stay on the audio here, but see if I can get my computer back on. While we're waiting for that, I wanted to just throw out a question to all of you before I go to the last piece of this. And that is, what are as you've set up your agency demographic data and set up your agency for NEMSIS 3 reporting, or if you're a vendor, as you've helped your customers with this, or a state as you've worked with your agencies, what are common issues that you've run into or challenges as you've set up agencies? What are the things that have been tricky for you?
Hi there, Keenan. Are you on the phone from Zoll? How about Laurel Boyd from Oregon? Can you just say hello so that we can check the volume and see if you can hear us or respond?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Great.
Hey, Monet, you might need to take back presentation role so that you can admit me back into the Join Me call.
Okay.
Okay, now let's see. It looks like I'm back in. See if you can switch. Oh, I might be there twice. See if you can switch it to the one that I am now. Oh, maybe I can. Hold on. Let's see. Oops.
There we go, Josh.
There. Okay, we're back. All right. So you should see the DEM dataset data dictionary.
Thank you. And Laurel was on the call as well. She was going to just say hello, I guess, and maybe respond. Laurel, do you have any response for Josh's question about common issues that you may have seen in your state? Oh, but you're in Oregon.
I'm in Oregon, and it's week 3.5 for me on the job, so I hope that Josh can tell me what issues we've been having.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to share right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
How about others from from EMS agencies as you've set up your software for NEMSIS 3 reporting? Any challenges that you've run into in setting up your agency?
Okay, Keenan is going to respond, and I'm going to see if I can get him unmuted here. Oh. Hi, Keenan. Can you respond?
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Hey, we can hear you.
Sweet. I think you were asking us to just respond to the question of what we've seen. And I think that the major thing we've seen as far as the demographic submissions from, at least from the Zoll side, is some disparity between different states and how they, what flavor they want, what demographic information they actually want. We've run into some states that don't actually want the demographic data set submitted from our system. They'd rather have it done inside their own system. And that's really the majority of it.
Yeah, that's a big thing we've seen all across the country. I did a presentation for state data managers on July 5th, a couple of weeks ago, and really touched on that topic, that if they're not receiving demographic data from their agency's software, they don't know that their agency's set up their software correctly. They may manage demographic data within their state system, but that doesn't tell them that the agency's got everything set up right. So I encourage states to receive and accept demographic data from agencies so that they can verify that the agency has in fact set things up correctly. Also, it's you're as a vendor, you're providing those features to your agencies, and they have to use them to set up their software to do patient care reporting. And then for them to have to switch over and log into a state system and manually set up all the same information is, of course, a duplicate effort for them. So it's also to the agency's advantage if their state accepts their demographic data straight from their agency software. Thanks for your comments on that. Clay threw out a question that we'd love to get response on. How many EMS agencies on this call were aware of the state data set resources that I showed you? So for example, I showed you the state data set from Oregon. Those of you who are from EMS agencies, go ahead and unmute yourselves and let us know, are you were you previously aware that that these state data set resources are available?
This is Jesse from Butler Ambulance Service, and we're in the state of Pennsylvania. And when we transitioned over, we had a lot of problems because Pennsylvania has never really thrown out a lot of data or requirements. I know initially Pennsylvania, they didn't even want the data, like the demographics set at first. And then they would change stuff and not tell anybody as far as codes go, and they tie it to schematron. And now I know that's there. That's actually really nice.
Let's see how much is there for Pennsylvania. So it looks like they added their state data set last fall. Good, they have gone through several areas of this, yeah. So now you might be in a little better shape. So for example, you could get their facility list with nearly 1,000 facilities on it. Yeah. Medications, procedures, they're there. Cool. And I know that AMR is aware of these resources. I've worked with AMR in a couple different states in the transition. Great. Okay, so for the last topic here, I'd like to cover some issues that I typically run into as I review demographic data from EMS agencies, and just kind of point out what these issues are and how you would address them. So here's probably one of the most common issues that I see. When I look at an EMS agency's service area in the data that comes out of the system, I'll see something like this. They'll have a service area state. They'll have that filled in. It might say Oregon. And they'll usually have counties listed, maybe Clackamas and Multnomah. And then both the census tracts and the zip codes will be blank. Or sometimes the zip codes are filled out, but almost always the census tracts are blank. I described earlier how the census data really enriches the context around your patient care reports. And so to fill in that census tract data, use the NEMSIS EMS Agency Service Area Builder, find that list of census tracts that your agency serves, and then in your software, whatever product you use, you can fill in that list of census tracts. You generally only have to do this once, unless your service area changes sometime in the future. So it's kind of a one-time effort that brings a lot of richness to the context of your data. So that's one issue I see all the time. Another issue I see all the time is in annual statistics. In fact, I've shown 3 different issues here. Issue number 1, annual stats where everything is blank. Okay, they simply haven't been filled out. This is invalid. Your demographic data will fail NEMSIS validation because you need to have at least one set of annual statistics. So that's, of course, a problem there when everything was just skipped. So find the annual statistics area in your software, and you can go ahead and fill in some stats for a recent year. Other common thing that I see is I'll see annual statistics with a year, but no actual statistics. So, of course, that's not helpful. I guess it's nice to know that your agency existed in 2017, but we really don't know anything about how many calls you went on. Again, your area and population, you can get those from the NEMSIS Service Area Builder. And then fill in the other stats that are pertinent to your agency. How many 911 calls were received, how many times you were dispatched, how many times you transported, how many times you contacted a patient, whatever applies to your agency. So that's the second most common thing I see is I'll see a year and then everything else is blank. The third most common thing I see is I see the current year and everything is blank. Okay, so these are annual statistics that should be recorded after the fact. 2018 is still happening today. So I would not expect you to have annual statistics for a year that hasn't finished happening yet. Put in annual statistics for last year. Now you can put in as many previous years as you want, but at least as a starting point, go ahead and get last year put in. Now sometime in spring of 2019, go ahead and add the 2018 numbers and you'll have numbers by then that you can add in. Another common thing that I see when I look at medications or procedures by level, and I see basically all levels carrying all of the same medications. I'm seeing that your EMRs and your EMTs and your AEMTs are carrying the same 98 medications that your paramedics carry. I know that's not right. I know that your EMRs can only do a handful of medications, and so I see this a lot. So you'll want to update your medication list by level. Take out all the medications that your EMRs don't do. Now, most software products have been set up so that when you go to record the administration of a medication, you select who administered the medication. That's a NEMSIS data element. And when you select who administered the medication, then the software will restrict the list of medications down to just the meds that people of that level can do. So if you had a paramedic and an EMT on the call, and you go to record a medication administered, and it was an EMT who gave the medication, the software will usually restrict the list down to just EMT meds. And that helps to prevent errors, where you don't accidentally record an EMT giving a medication that EMTs don't give. Well, if you haven't set up the medication list correctly in your software, then you don't have that benefit. When you select who gave the med, it's an EMT, it's going to show all 98 medications, and you lose that benefit. If you've set up medications by level to just the dozen or so medications that EMTs do, then when you're filling out patient care reports, you're less likely to have that accidental error of picking the wrong medication that was given by an EMT. So that's a common issue I see. Same thing with procedures. Another common issue that I see is people on the personnel list who don't have a license number. So here's my example. There's me. May have even recorded what state my license is in, but no license number. This is a problem because the license number is the way that we identify the person on a patient care report as a crew member. So when we record down the crew members who were on a call, when that data gets exported out of your system, it exports out the license number of each crew member. It doesn't export out their name. It just exports their license number. So if their license number is blank in your agency setup, then it's going to be blank on a patient care report. And so on the patient care report, what we'll see is we will see that there were crew members. There may have been 2 or 3 crew members, but 1 or more of them, we don't know who it was because their license number is blank. So in your agency setup, review your personnel list and make sure that you have a license number for every personnel on the list, because that is the key that connects from patient care report data back to their demographic data, where we can find things like their name. That's a common issue I see. One more common issue that I see is duplicates. Look at this list of vehicles and look at what's wrong with this list. Aside from the fact that they're Fords, there's one other thing that's wrong with this list, and it's that they both have the same vehicle number. So we cannot uniquely identify these vehicles. On a patient care report, the way that we identify which vehicle was on the call is by the vehicle number. So on a patient care report, we would just see that M1 was the vehicle on the call. But if we tie back to demographic data, we see that there are 2 vehicles with the vehicle number of M1, so we don't know which vehicle it was that was on the call. It was one of these 2, but we don't know which. So make sure that every vehicle has a unique vehicle number. Now, this does not only apply to vehicles. It applies to personnel. Every person should have a unique license number. Every facility should have a unique facility ID, at least within that facility type. Every medical device should be uniquely identified, and so on. So catch those duplicates and see what you can do to fix them. Figure out maybe this is really M11 or M10 or M2, that you can fix that. Once it's fixed in demographics, that fix flows down to patient care reports. All right, so those are kind of some common issues that I see as I review demographic data from agencies. And hopefully you can be aware of those and fix them in your own setup. All right, we've got plenty of time for questions. It's been quiet today, but lots of time left here for any questions that you may have about agency demographic data or agency setup in NEMSIS 3. Any questions?
Josh, will these slides be available?
Good question. I know Monet recorded the presentation,
Yes,
but
sir.
you're looking for, like, if you could just get the PowerPoint file?
Yeah, I was thinking we could share this with our agencies, and that might be a quick way to get them going.
Okay. Yeah, Monet, would that be something we could do to send out the slides there?
Shortly after this presentation, the recording will be available, and I will post it on the NEMSIS website under public trainings.
Okay, and then would we be able to post the PowerPoint slides with that?
Absolutely. If you'd like to send me that after the call, we can, anyone who would like the PowerPoint presentation can go to the NEMSIS website under staff contacts, click on Monet, send me an email with your email information, and I can send you the slides.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, other questions this morning? All right, well, not hearing any, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up for the morning with this presentation. I want to thank everyone for attending and hope that this gave you some insight into the scope of demographic data and especially areas that could be focused on at the agency level and, of course, state and vendors as you work with your agencies to help ensure that each agency has recorded good, useful, accurate agency configuration and demographic data that flows up to the state and national levels in a way that's useful. So Monet, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time this morning and participating on this webinar presentation. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right, thanks, everyone.